Joining us now is BirdLife, an NGO that works to protect and ensure the biodiversity of bird species and habitats in Malta. They join us today to explain how light pollution affects Malta's bird. Jasmine Hinwood is the events assistant for BirdLife Malta. She is British but moved to Malta in September and will be here for 1 year before pursuing a degree in wildlife education and media studies. Francesca Uskov is originally from the UK. She has a background in zoology and previously worked at a wetland nature reserve. She is now in Malta, and she's an education assistant for BirdLife Malta and moved here in October. Hello.
Hi, good morning.
Great to have you here with us.
Thank you, lovely to be here.
Okay, so the floor is yours.
Perfect, thank you. We are BirdLife Malta and we're very excited to be here today. We're really excited to talk you through some of the work that BirdLife Malta do and explain the importance of Malta to migratory bird species as well as resident bird species. So you might be asking yourself, who are BirdLife Malta? Well, we are actually the oldest environmental non-government organisation in Malta. We started as just a small group of nature lovers, but we came together as they could see the damage being done to Malta's diverse wildlife. MOS, or the Maltese Ornithological Society, was founded in 1962 with the aims being the protection of birds and their habitats. This was a bold step at the time, as hunting and trapping were a popular way of life for all classes of Maltese society, but they didn't let this stand in their way. Because of this, we are now a partner organisation of BirdLife International, and we form a network of 120 NGOs worldwide with the aim of creating a united voice. We speak out for both local and international wildlife. We have 5 main aims, which are to protect. So through community engagement projects and our nature reserves, we create homes for nature and safe places for both migratory and resident bird species. We also monitor the spring and autumn migration with the aims of deterring, detecting and reporting the illegal persecution of protected birds. We also campaign, so we've been campaigning for better wildlife protection in Malta since 1962 when we were founded. Our previous campaign work has resulted in the end of robbing trapping and the creation of new nature reserves. We take a stand to protect Malta's wildlife from damaging developments, and we fight for stronger legislation to protect Europe's bird species. We also research, so BirdLife Malta has actually been studying avian species in Malta since the early 50s. Our main research project focuses on the breeding seabirds of Malta currently, and that's the one we're going to talk about today. But through our scientific work, monitoring populations, we create protected areas, and we ensure we're taking the right action to save the Mediterranean bird populations. We also educate, so BirdLife Malta has an education mission to connect children with nature, both through formal and informal programs that lay emphasis on experiential learning. We offer direct physical, sensory, and intellectual ways of developing a relationship with the world we depend on for our survival. And then lastly, we also care. So we also provide an injured bird service, responding to reports from the general public of birds injured through hunting or exhausted on migration. We're also working on setting up an established rehabilitation centre for injured birds, so we can provide treatment and care needed to get birds back to our skies, to as many as possible. So, as part of our research aim, we have been working on a 5-year-long project which has just finished. This is the BirdLife Malta's EU-funded Life Archipelago Garnia project, which aims at securing the Maltese islands for the Yelkin shearwater. This is a small shearwater species that is only found in central and eastern Mediterranean regions. The Maltese Islands are actually home to approximately 10% of the global population of this seabird species, so the protection is really important here on a global scale, especially with the drastic declines they've had over the last decade. The species has also recently been listed as vulnerable in the International Union for Conservation of Nature Red List of Threatened Species. It's also protected by international conservation as well as local legislation. So we now have a short video that wraps up this amazing project, so we hope you enjoy.
Situated in the center of the Mediterranean Sea, the Maltese archipelago is an important site for breeding Mediterranean seabirds such as Yelkin shearwaters. The Yelkin shearwater is endemic to the Mediterranean and is globally threatened, declining in population. These vulnerable seabirds nest inside burrows or among boulders on Maltese cliffs. Together with partners Transport Malta and the Royal Society for the Protection of Birds (RSPB), BirdLife Malta has been running the Life Archipelago Guarnia project, funded by the Life Programme of the European Union as main co-financer together with Malta's Ministry for the Environment, Climate Change and Planning on this secretive species since 2015.
Before any of the life projects that started in the Maltese Islands, we had very little information about the breeding biology, numbers and the status of the elco and shearwater in the Maltese Islands.
Our first life project, which started way back in 2006, focused on the elco and shearwater at Irdum tal-Madonna, and we started doing some very preliminary research on this bird and also some conservation actions. And we also realized there was a lack of awareness about this bird.
Life Archipelago Guarnia project aims to secure the Maltese Islands and the coastline for the breeding elco and shearwaters. This species is a pelagic seabird species, which means spend most of their time out at the sea, and they visit the land only for breeding, and they do it only at night when it's dark.
Throughout the 5 years of the project, Life Archipelago Guarnia identified the threats to these seabirds, their breeding sites and their population size. In the second half of the project, solutions were identified thanks to ongoing collaboration with several stakeholders. The project has tackled 4 main threats to the species. The primary threat is predation of eggs and chicks by rats, which reduces their success in raising the chick and eventually causes a decrease in the population.
The Maltese Islands hold up to around 10% of the global breeding population of this species. In around 6 colonies, we are conducting rat control efforts in order to stop rats eating the eggs and the chicks of this bird.
Light pollution is another threat which prevents adult birds from entering the nest and causes young ones to become disoriented when they are leaving their nests.
Recently, the Maltese Islands have actually been identified as one of the worst affected countries by light pollution. The elco and shearwater is a species that is incredibly sensitive to levels of artificial light at night. We've been collaborating with various stakeholders, including local councils and relevant authorities that are responsible for large lighting projects, such as street lighting and large installations. Our main goal at these sites is to mitigate light pollution using dark sky-friendly fixtures that direct light when and where it's needed.
Another threat is the disturbance of nesting birds by boat-based tourism activities.
When large boats are entering in the small caves, especially when the seabirds are breeding there, and of course without knowing that there are sensitive species inside these caves, especially when they anchor in front of the cliffs and having loud music, noise, and also lights in the evening, this means sustained disturbance to the breeding elco and shearwaters inside these cliffs. We wanted to find a solution in collaboration with both industry and also with our project partner Transport Malta.
This is a complex matter, primarily because the birds breed in areas which are also very important to the local commercial vessel operators. So we have been trying to find a compromise.
Finally, nesting birds are also disturbed by recreational activities at colony sites.
These birds lay only a single egg each year, and if they lose that egg or that chick, then they don't relay. So it's incredibly important that we protect them for as long as possible throughout the breeding season. At the same time, we've been raising awareness amongst the members of the public that use Natura 2000 sites for recreational activity. We ask them to take their litter home, especially organic rubbish, and to leave no trace if they are camping or using the area.
The project also cooperated with several local stakeholders, amongst these the Malta Tourism Authority, to invest in more sustainable boat-based tourism.
The MTA was involved in discussions in order to assist Transport Malta achieve a level of discussion with the operators of pleasure craft.
Another important stakeholder was ERA, the Environment and Resources Authority, to utilize the project outcomes to fulfill European Commission reporting requirements.
We are interested in updating the status of the quality of the breeding colonies of seabirds, so all data which was collected through the project contributed to this final goal.
All these collaborations helped us to maximize the impact of conservation actions implemented throughout the project.
As we come to the end of this project, I can see the changes that have been made and the successes as the breeding numbers have gone up, our rat populations have gone down, which is a great success.
By raising awareness to the public about the presence of these seabirds on the cliffs, we can help mitigate these impacts, such as litter, boat engine noises, loud music, lights. It's a lot of little things put together that can help.
We need a young, fresh blood to continue studying these birds, to learn more about the history, about their survival, about feeding, their diet, and 1001 other questions. We've learned a lot, but there's still a lot more to learn about these secretive birds.
Through our Life Archipelago Guarnia project, we're happy to have secured the Maltese Islands for the Elk on Shearwater. We also hope to have set the way forward for more international collaboration in protecting our common seabird heritage in the Mediterranean.
Great, so I hope you guys enjoyed that video. There are some very adorable photos of the fledglings on there, so.
Very fluffy they are.
Yeah, they're very, very cute, yeah. We have a map just behind us, which also highlights the shearwater and petrel colonies. So all the purple lines on the map behind us, that is where known shearwater and petrel colonies are. So you can see they cover most of the Maltese coastline. There's 3 species that we know quite a lot about, which is the Scopoli shearwater. We have approximately 5,000 pairs of these here, which is thought to be about 3% of the global population. We then have the Yelkian shearwater, which is what we've done our life project on. We have only 2,000 pairs of these, but this is actually between 7 and 10% of the global population. So that really shows just how important Malta is to this species. You've also got an estimated 50% of the Mediterranean population of storm petrels, which is thought to be between 5,000 and 8,000 pairs. So Malta really is a vital country for so many species, and it gives a really important rest stop for migrating species as well that are on their way to warmer climates. We can really often see rare and protected birds in our skies here, so definitely recommend getting some binoculars and just going out for a nice walk. It's amazing some of the species that you can spot here. So what threats do they actually face? So there are 4 main ones that we have identified so far, which are rats, noise pollution, light pollution, and the climate crisis. So with rats, this threat is actually mostly due to the human influence and the pollution that we leave behind. With humans moving around more and more and using the islands for lots of recreational activities, the levels of litter and pollution left behind is increasing tenfold. This means there's increased food resources for the rat populations, which leads to an increase in their breeding habits. This is a direct impact on the bird populations, as the rats do predate on the eggs in the nest, so they eat the eggs. This is a major issue for the species. As they did mention in the video, they only lay single eggs once a year. So the survival of these species is greatly impacted. We will lose entire generations if most of the eggs are eaten by the increase of rat populations. The best way we can reduce this risk is just by ensuring we take any litter home with us and making sure we recycle everything we can, reuse what we can, and especially with food waste, making sure this is properly stored. And if you see other litter lying around, take that home with you as well. It's amazing how much of an impact this can have. Noise pollution is also another issue that is quite bad for these birds. It is mostly caused by the maritime and recreational activities that take place around the islands. This one's a little bit more difficult because as an island, we do rely quite heavily on the use of this. So ship engines and horns from working boats that are coming and bringing us food and things, as well as loud music and noise from people on recreational boat trips, so people going to Camino for swimming trips, etc. This one is a little bit harder because especially with the tourism trips, we do rely quite heavily on them as a society, but it does cause huge disturbances for the birds. The seabird responses from the noise pollution can vary, but we've observed a few of the following issues. So physical damage to their ears as well as stress responses. So if they have physical damage to their ears, this is going to put their balance off, so it's going to affect their flying. They also have flight or flushing responses. So if it's too noisy, they get scared, they will leave their nests, which means if they have fledglings or eggs there, there's no one there to look after them. So again, we're losing entire generations of birds. You also have a change in their foraging behaviors. So if there is a large group of ships in an area they would normally go to fish, they're going to have to fly further to get food. This means if they're flying further, they're using more energy than they're collecting from their food sources. So this all in turn causes a decline in the population numbers. The best way that we can eliminate this threat is just to avoid visiting the nesting sites if we can, reducing the time of years we go, the time of day, and if we know there is birds there, just being really conscious. They tend to breed around February time, and then we have chicks in around June, July. So especially in the peak season when all the fledglings are there, just being extra cautious with how much noise we're making. We also have two more prominent threats, which are the light pollution and climate crisis. So these are two issues that we're going to dive into some more detail for. So I'm just going to pass over to Francesca.
So the issues caused by light pollution can be split into two broad categories, environmental and human. We're going to start with environmental. So there are 5 main environmental issues that light pollution causes, and these are reduced biodiversity, the disruption of normal ecological processes, for example, photosynthesis in plants, the disruption of normal animal and plant behavior, the stranding of threatened seabird species, such as shearwaters and petrels, and the reduced visibility of the night sky. And these issues are all quite interlinked. The reason this happens is because most animals and plant species rely on the cycle of the sun and moon to regulate their own behaviors. So for example, if animals come out at dawn and dusk to feed, they may be confused by artificial light and come out at the wrong time. This may mean that the food that they need to survive may not be available, and so they are less likely to survive and breed as a result. A similar situation happens with plants. If plants cannot photosynthesize properly, they therefore cannot grow. And as a result, the animals that then feed on those plants cannot get enough food, and then they cannot survive and breed. So the biodiversity at multiple levels of the food chain is affected. And in terms of the shearwaters and petrels, like the video touched upon, this can really affect the fledglings. So when fledglings take their first flight, they should be going out towards the sea. However, when there's artificial light coming from the land, this can confuse them and actually attract them in the wrong direction towards the land. If they become stranded, if they are not rescued by humans, they can become vulnerable to many things, including dehydration, starvation, predation, and being hit by vehicles. So you may be thinking at this point, okay, this sounds quite bad, but what does it have to do with me? And the answer is quite a lot. Light pollution can also cause multiple issues, quite serious physical and mental issues in humans as well. And there are multiple studies to support what I'm going to be talking about, but the fundamental reason is the same. That humans, like most animals and plants, also rely on the cycle of the sun and the moon to regulate our own bodily functions. So there are 5 main human issues that light pollution causes. The disruption of the circadian rhythm, which is our natural sleep-wake cycle, insomnia, obesity, poor mental health, and increased risks of certain types of cancers. If we are exposed to artificial lights for extended periods of time, our bodies will struggle to regulate our heart rate and blood pressure. As a result, we may be unable to enter the deep sleep portion of our sleep cycle, and I'm sure we've all experienced how awful we can feel if we haven't had a proper night's sleep. If you can imagine that this carries on over long periods of time, it can cause multiple further issues, especially to do with weight and mental health. So it's really important for us to regulate our own artificial light exposure, and this includes switching off our smartphones before going to bed. Now, we've all heard about the climate crisis. This is the final issue we're going to be talking about. It's a phrase that I'm sure you've become very familiar with. It's been on the news increasingly over the last couple of years. And it's a very complex issue, and it can be difficult to focus on an individual point. But we're going to be specifically discussing the effects the climate crisis is having on seabirds. Now, there are 3 main issues, but they are all very intrinsically linked. Rising sea temperatures, this is one we are all aware of. This is due to an increase in carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. As carbon dioxide levels increase, the sea absorbs more of this carbon dioxide. This causes the temperature of the water to increase. As a result, there is less oxygen available for organisms like plankton, which is the food of many seabird species. Rising sea temperatures can also cause rising sea levels by causing the ice caps to melt. more water in the ocean means that the sea levels will rise. And this has a very specific effect on seabirds, like shearwaters and petrels, because they nest on cliff faces and on coastlines. Many of these species return to the same nesting area year upon year to breed. And some species even return to the same exact nest every year. Now, if you can imagine that you are returning to the same nest to breed, but year upon year, this nest is also becoming flooded. So there can be large gaps in between the successful breeding attempts, if there are any successful breeding attempts at all. And this can cause drastic population declines in these species. The final issue is ocean acidification, and this is very closely linked to the rising sea temperatures, as it's also caused by an increase in carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. Ocean acidification, like a decrease in oxygen levels, makes it difficult for organisms like plankton to survive, and this means that seabirds have to forage further and further afield in order to find their food. Now, even if they can find that food, they have wasted much more energy trying to find that food. So this means they may no longer have the energy to breed, to feed their chicks, or to even survive. So after those last few slides, you may be feeling quite negative about this. But the good thing is that we can all do something to help. Malta is currently the 17th most light polluted country by population. So each and every one of us has the chance and the obligation to change this. The first way we can do this is pretty obvious. Turn off your lights. It's a very easy switch. Reducing the use of unnecessary lights can quickly impact the levels of light pollution, as well as decreasing your carbon footprint, and not to mention your electricity bill. This is a simple habit that can be done quickly, just a simple case of turning off the lights when you leave the room. The second is research. There are so many resources available to the public now that it is very easy to find out ways in which you can help. For example, this could be trying to find a more energy-efficient, eco-friendly light bulb for your outdoor light, or buying a timer for your lights, so that even if you forget to switch it off, it doesn't matter, because there is a set time that your lights will go off in the evening. The third is to get involved. With the rise in social media usage, there are more virtual events and campaigns than ever to get involved with. For example, this could involve writing to your local government to see if you can campaign for reduced outdoor lights, or to set schedules on when outdoor lighting can be turned on. And the final thing is educate others. It's incredible how much difference a simple conversation with family and friends can have. So few people are actually aware of these issues, let alone the simple changes that we can all make in order to be part of the solution. And never feel like you as an individual can't make a difference. Any impact, no matter big or small, is still an impact, and every drop in the ocean will create a ripple. Thank you so much for joining us today. We really hope you enjoyed our presentation and found it interesting. If you would like to find out more about this topic or about the other work that we do, please visit our website, birdlifemalta.org. And you can visit us on Facebook at BirdLife Malta and Instagram at birdlife_Malta. Thank you.
That was so interesting.
Thank you.
Besides the fact that the shearwater and the petrels were so fluffy and so cute.
Really adorable.
Whilst watching the video, I saw that you, some of the members of your organization would get the birds and put a ring around their legs. What is that process all about, and why do you do it, and how do you do it?
Yeah. Do you want me to take this on? Or?
You can if you want to.
So we have a bird ringing scheme as part of our organisation. This is widely done for research. So if birds are recaptured or restranded, we can check the information that's on the ring on their leg. This tells us where they've come from, how old they are, what sex they are. We can gather a lot of information from this. So it's really vital for research purposes. To be able to put rings on a bird, you actually have to do quite a lot of training. I believe it's about 2.5 years for a license. So you have to be very dedicated. you would be shown how to do it, and you have to do so many bird ringings before you can then do it on your own. It's really interesting to watch, and we do actually do some live demonstrations at this with our nature reserves, and we've done one virtually on Facebook as well. So if you are interested in seeing more on this, then have a look on our social medias or on our website.
We're talking about wildlife here, so they're probably not as friendly as they look cute, but
Yes.
probably they're not as friendly when you sort of catch them to put the ring on them. Do you protect yourselves in any way when trapping them?
Yeah, people do tend to wear gloves because you are right that they can bite and it can be quite painful, but the results are worth it.
Great. Okay, so we have a few more questions. Is it only birds that you protect with your research?
No, so this is actually a huge stereotype about BirdLife Malta. So although birds are our main priority, we do also protect just ecosystems and diverse wildlife in general, because the birds rely on so many other animals to survive. So especially with the nature reserves that we have, so we run 4 nature reserves. We do a lot of protection work for the other species that we have here, and we do fight for legislation in general for wildlife, both internationally and locally in Malta.
Okay. Are your nature reserves open to the public?
They are indeed. They are closed at certain times of year for breeding purposes, but they are open at certain times during the week and at the weekends, so visit our websites to find out the exact dates and times.
Great. And we've seen a lot of ways how we can in general help protect the wildlife, not just those birds, but maybe also others. What can we do from our own homes to further help with the environment?
So people that want to get involved from their own homes, especially with COVID, not many people are happy going out. There is lots of campaigns on social media or just on our website. So just things like signing petitions. You don't even have to leave your sofa, just quickly do it on your smartphone, and then you've immediately made a difference. If people do want to actually come and help us out physically, we do volunteer schemes and things. Especially during the autumn and spring migration periods, we need as many people as we can to help us monitor the bird species. There's a huge increase in injured bird calls during this time, so it's definitely great to have some extra hands and eyes to help us out with that.
Okay, so we have an audience question. Someone is asking us, where do the migratory birds in Malta come from?
Great question.
So the majority breed in Africa and then travel through Malta to Northern Europe to spend the summer. So when I worked at a nature reserve in the UK, and actually a lot of the birds that I see here are very similar because it's a very, very important stopover point for birds that are migrating to refuel and have a nice rest before they carry on their journey.
And these are the migratory birds, because then there are others like the sheer waters and the petrels who just breed over here and they feed over here, so it's their home.
Yes,
and therefore we have to share that with them.
Yeah, and although we do a bird ringing scheme like the one you saw in the video, every other country in the world will also have their own versions of this. So like I said, you can gather the information from the ring on a bird's leg, so we can actually tell where they've flown from or where they're flying to with these bird rings as well.
Do you have another live project like this one that we saw that you'd be doing next?
Yeah, so we will be doing another life project. I believe this is going to be another 5-year-long project. As they are EU funded, it takes a lot of back and forth conversations, a lot of admin work before they're finalised. So we are going to be running another one. We just don't have all the details confirmed for it just yet, but it's definitely something our research team will be doing.
Very good. We have another audience question. Do you have any project protecting the birds from hunting?
So we don't have a specific project protecting them from hunting, as we're not against hunting. We are just against the illegal use of hunting. So especially with the endangered birds or the protected birds, we just try and educate people on what is legal and what is not legal, and just highlight the difference, because there's a lot of rare bird species that visit Malta or fly over Malta. And like we could see with the elky and shearwaters, there is not many of them. So populations can very quickly decline if illegal hunting and trapping isn't monitored.
This is interesting because most people would think that BirdLife Malta is against the hunters, but it really isn't. They can really work
We're
along
against
together.
irresponsible and illegal poaching, so there is a very distinct difference.
Yeah, and it's a big stereotype for us, because some hunting can be good for conservation in terms of population controls and things. So, like example, in the UK, when they have the badger culls and things like this is another kind of difficult one. There's a lot of discussion. So yeah, it's definitely a stereotype. It's the illegal side that we are against.
Which would be great if there is more information about this, because in the minds of some people it might not be as clear as that. Okay,
100%.
another audience question. Would designating areas as national parks help protect them?
That's a great question.
Yeah, 100%. So especially somewhere like Malta, which is really densely populated, it's very difficult for birds to find the space to actually even just rest, let alone to forage and to breed. And this is mainly because even if they don't necessarily see people, just even the noise from the cars, you know how noisy our roads can get, that can really affect them. For example, at one of our nature reserves, Selina, that's unfortunately next to a main road, and sometimes if a really noisy motorbike goes past, for example, all of the birds are up and gone. So to have somewhere just peaceful and quiet for them to carry out their natural behaviours without being disturbed is incredibly important, especially because even if they don't physically react, for example, by flying away, some birds, even if humans are nearby, it can actually increase their heart rate. And that means that they are almost passively using more energy just by having people around. So imagine if you're like shaking the entire time, that's really going to,
So it's like bird anxiety.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, just having somewhere nice and peaceful for them to be themselves would be fantastic.
Okay, more audience questions. This is such an
Very popular
interesting
today.
subject for the audience. Where does the belted kingfisher come from?
Oh, do you know this
I am afraid I don't know the answer to that question, but we can certainly find out for you.
One of my favourite birds, though. They're so pretty, a kingfisher. I haven't had a chance to see one yet, and I really want to.
They are gorgeous. It's very difficult to find one sat still. They're usually zooming around.
It's very
That's the
hard to
only
get a good
time I've
photo.
seen one. It's just a massive I can't say the word, flash of blue going past. Yeah.
Because their colours are so vivid.
Yeah, they're beautiful.
They are incredible.
How do you get involved with BirdLife?
So how did we get involved, or how do you get involved?
How did you get involved? And if there's someone out there who would really like to get involved with BirdLife, or would really like to help you conserve these areas or help protect the wildlife, what should they do?
So we both got involved just by looking online for job applications and came across BirdLife. So they offer 12-month voluntary positions, which is what we're both doing here. We will actually be looking for new positions in the new year. So if people are interested in the education side, communications, conservation, we're going to have lots of opportunities opening up. And it's a very lovely team to work for. We both have been here for only a few months, but we already feel like family.
That's great. Okay, can noise pollution affect birds?
Yeah, so we did touch on this in the presentation slightly, and it's amazing how much it does affect them. So like Francesca said, with the anxiety, their increased heart rate, it also damages their ears. Now, I don't know if anyone has ever had an ear infection before, or when your ears haven't popped after a flight and things.
It's terrible.
Your balance is really off. So imagine that when you're trying to fly, they're trying to, steer their directions and things. Even just a little bit of damage to their ears can greatly impact their flight. So it really is a big problem for them. But I know with tourism and things, especially with the boats, it's quite a difficult one to battle. But it's just being conscious of how much noise we're making and not making unnecessary noise. We know noise pollution can't be avoided, but it's just reducing that risk for the birds.
It's all about compromise, really.
Yeah, a nice middle ground.
Okay, so a couple more questions. Where do robins and woodpeckers come from?
I mean, they can be found in many different countries. So we get robins here. Do we get woodpeckers here?
I can't
think off the top of my head. I must be honest, I haven't been here for very long, so I'm still learning the differences.
We're not the conservation team, so we're not the experts on the birds, but we know enough. But yeah, robins, we get loads of robins here. We get the robins in the UK, you get them in
They're found
a lot
across
of places.
Europe. Yeah, and they're one of the species that can be seen year-round as well. They're a beautiful bird.
They are. Okay, another question coming in. How can the government help protect birds?
Great question. So we have been doing a lot of campaigns and things recently, and one that we actually recently had a positive thing was the ban on lead in shotgun pellets, because if a bird is injured through shooting, even if they aren't killed, if there is a bit of lead stuck in them, it can poison them and they can die from this. So this is one that the government has actually just passed through. There are other things that the government can do, which is just listen to the people, writing letters or doing protests. Just making your voice heard is going to make the government aware of what we want from them. Just a simple conversation.
That's great. Thank you so much for being here and for sharing a little bit of what you do with us, for showing us the videos. It's amazing.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Thank you very much.